welcome back. You're live with Expresso. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a truly inspirational start to a brand new week, focusing on communities, on those amazing stories, on amazing people who are doing incredible things for their community and those around them. Now, let's focus on probably one of the darkest areas, and let that conjure what you will, Manenberg, an area in the Cape Flats whose layouts firmly informed by apartheid logic, repeatedly defined by its high rates of violent crime, substance abuse and gangsterism. This is the Manenberg that we know. However, it is also a community that is defined differently, and Pete Portal, an Englishman who has lived in South Africa for a decade now, is helping to rehabilitate the community through faith, and he is shining a light on some of these amazing stories.
Could another world be calling, a compelling new reality? Where walls are torn down and friendships built? Where myths are exposed and unheard voices listened to? The old order of things made new. But what of the cost? The accusation, the despair, the choruses of "it can't be done." We can choose what to believe, to rise up above the pointing fingers of accusation and the shrugs of indifference. The stories we live in are the stories we live out. What if yours is a story that the world is crying out to hear? Because ultimately, there is no neutral ground.
Wow.
Wow, Pete's debut novel, No Neutral Ground, draws on a decade of his experience in the community, and he joins Expresso to share with us and you some of his his narrative, his story, his faith, and I suppose your reason for being ultimately at this stage. Dude, welcome. Thank you so much for
thanks for having me.
Thank
you.
you.
So good to have you on the show, Pete. I think
Thanks.
this is such an important story that you're telling, because I think so many communities around Cape Town and around South Africa feel, you know, like they only have one kind of narrative spoken. It's either violence, it's negativity, it's fear, they feel invisible. Yeah. What prompted you to want to shine a light on these stories, specifically communities like Manenberg?
Yeah, well, I never really knew much about what was going on in South Africa growing up. I'm from England, as you know, but it was coming over as a student for a short-term trip, one university holiday. We stayed in a community called Bontjeville and just fell in love with it, but got deeply traumatized by it in the same token. And I went back to the UK and finished my degree and was actually working in kids TV, and just figured I could do this for the rest of my life, but I've seen something in the Cape Flats that I want to respond to. Wow. And so it wasn't so much about choosing issues as it was around choosing people. I'd met people, I'd seen their lived experience. It was all new to me, and I figured, well, I was 23 at the time, I've got a responsibility to respond. Why not? And yeah, so 10 years later, here I am still doing it.
That's powerful.
Still strong. It's one thing choosing to want to do something selfless and help someone, and then you must walk step by step at the hand of a drug addict that's trying to pull themselves out of that space. Just how difficult is that reality? The reality, let's be honest, of so many, the majority of people caught in that kind of cycle. How challenging has this path been?
Yeah, it's been brutal. I was chatting to my wife, and she had heard someone use a word, coin a word, brutiful. So it's brutal and it's beautiful at the same time. When you're being stolen from and manipulated, it's brutal. When you see lives transformed, it's absolutely beautiful. And so yeah, but pivotally, when I started, I was doing it living with a guy on heroin alone. And then as he got free, and as those of us I was working with began to see more guys get free, then you establish a community, a brotherhood, actually that's a generative redemption of the gangs. Because people really are just wanting somewhere to belong, and drugs is a medication from trauma and abuse and poverty and a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. So what are some of the changes that you've seen through this walk that you've been doing with so many of the people that are in Manenberg?
Well, it's worth saying on a macro level, you know, things are getting worse, actually, statistically. But on a micro level, in the ones and twos we're seeing, I saw, you know, I lived with a guy 10 years ago, 19, drug addict, on heroin, dealing for the hard living gang. He's now 7 years clean. He's a parent to a young child, married, and doing really well. And his life influenced another young guy who's on heroin, and in another gang, he got free, came and lived with my wife and I. And it was his life that influenced the next kind of intake, as it were. So you're seeing this chain of transformation affecting lives. It's like guys say, I want what you've got. Where did you get free? Why are your eyes shining like they are? I want that.
That is
and so we decided, my wife and I, will, you know, people change people, not institutions. Let's move in, open our home for young guys coming out of gangs and drugs. And so they come live with us. Some of them get free, others don't.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you must have to recalibrate. I think maybe it's the only way that you can get through something like this. And I think as South Africans, we're always looking, when you look at the big picture, like you say, we lose hope, but then you focus on the individual and you see something special.
Right.
Why now? Why put it into a book? Why tell the story on a macro level?
Yeah, well, interesting. I mean, the book started as therapy, honestly. I was just writing a diary on my laptop. It was the one thing I had that hadn't been stolen. I was saying to the guy who lived with me, I said, yeah, but you never got my laptop, did you? Because I moved it from drawer to drawer every day. And he goes, no, I knew exactly where your laptop was. I just knew that the moment I stole that, the game was over. So, yeah, it was therapy, really, from the beginning. And I think a few years ago, I took a sabbatical and thought, can I kind of put this in chronological form, put some sort of meat to the bones, as it were? And, you know, it just seemed to make sense 10 years in to kind of chronicle, just to remember some of the triumphs and tragedies along the way.
Sure. Powerful stuff indeed. This book is absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Pete, for coming and sharing this.
Thanks
You
for
are
having me.
definitely a Mandela Monday hero. It's absolutely amazing. Now, the searing debut novel by Pete Portal, No Neutral Ground, which contains raw accounts of faith breaking into violent and addicted young lives in Manenberg, is available from all leading online and book retailers. So get your hands on a copy. This man is changing lives, and I think that we can do the same thing as well. And if you are intrigued by these stories and would like to stand a chance to win one of 3 copies of this book, then all you have to do is simply SMS the keyword WIN along with your name and surname to 33728.
I want to say one of 2 copies, because we might be keeping one.
Yeah, for sure. Wow.
The competition is
Powerful.
open right now, closes at 9 a.m, so get on it. And as we've been asking you to do all morning, continue to share your inspirational stories. We live in this incredible country where people are doing amazing things, so it's very, we know, easy to lose faith, lose hope, but just focus on what the individuals are doing, and faith is there. Keep your faith. So thank you so much for inspiring us and doing what you're doing on behalf of all of the people that you've helped. I'm sure there is a massive amount of validation, yes, that comes with it, but you're doing something truly incredible. So thank you, man.
Well, thanks for having me.